And welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. We're talking about the Washington Commanders beating the New York Giants. And so it is good to see that the Washington Commanders are in the victory column for the first time this year. And so I must say that the one thing that I am going to say was an improvement was the kicking game. So shout out to Austin Cyber out there going out there and netting all those kicks for the Washington Commanders in order for them to win the game. That's right. 21 points off of field goals for the Washington Commanders. And so let's talk about key point number one. And I want to start with Jaden Daniels. I think that Jaden Daniels absolutely was a lot better this particular week than he was last week. Starting with what he did in the passing game, you see that he threw for 226 yards and he had a 99.1 rating. And so, no, he didn't have any touchdowns. He didn't have any INTs, which is a good thing as well. But I like the fact that it looks like his clock is slowing down a little bit. It looks like he's definitely learning a little bit more as to how to wait just a little bit more before he tucks and runs. And he's finding some wide receivers for some critical gains. In fact, when you look at what he was able to do on the game-winning drive, he got a nice pass down to Noah Brown, which essentially set the Washington Commanders up for the winning field goal. So you just see that type of progression, and I think you have to love that as a Washington Commanders fan. And then also, too, I like the fact that he was able to really use his feet, still be elusive enough to continue to help plays actually develop down the field. So I think that that was huge. Next up, I want to talk about the fact that he got it to Terry McLaurin. I love that. So Terry McLaurin, I know he only had 22 yards in this game, but he did have 8 targets and 6 of those were receptions. So that is a great thing to see that you have Terry McLaurin, who has had a 1,000-yard receiving campaign in the NFL. And I think that he is going to get some more continuity with Jaden Daniels. I certainly think that this is going to help with the Washington Commanders moving forward. So the fact that he was able to get 6 receptions, I think that that was huge. Zach Ertz, a lot better this week as well. 4 receptions, 62 yards. He had some big catches as well to help the Washington Commanders do their thing. So I think that that was huge. And then also, too, going back to Austin Eckler, I think that Austin Eckler was a player that I talked about in the offseason, something I talked about on my other podcast as well, that I think he was going to be huge for Jaden Daniels, and he is. He's a terrific piece for Jaden Daniels when it comes to checking down the football. And that's exactly what he does. I mean, 3 receptions, 47 yards. You're huge there. He had a 27-yarder as the longest, and he caught all 3 of his targets. And he also helped the Washington Commanders stay on balance on the backfield as well with 8 carries for 38 yards. So next, let's talk about Brian Robinson Jr. I think that Brian Robinson Jr. has definitely taken the next step this particular season. Definitely, you see why the Washington Commanders chose to go on with him versus Antonio Gibson. 17 rushes, 133 yards. And I mean, he absolutely gashed the Giants. And so I know he didn't have as many receptions as he did in week 1. That's fine. I mean, you want Brian Robinson to go ahead, utilize that strength. And he definitely showed you exactly why he should be the 1A back for the Commanders. And you have Austin Eckler as that 1B back for the change of pace. So kudos to him. I thought he ran through a ton of tacklers as well. So I think there was a lot of missed tackles and just, he ran through a lot of trash too. There's one of the games where he had a huge gain after the fumble recovery. He ran through some trash, got through, and then he squeaked off for a huge 40-yard gain. So Brian Robinson Jr. showed great vision and also, too, just great physicality and finishing runs and made it tough on that Giants defense to tackle. And so with that being said, defensively, when I look at it, I'm not sure that we improved necessarily in the secondary. I think that that was challenging for me just looking at this game. When we look at Malik Neighbors, 10 receptions, 127 yards on 18 targets. That's ridiculous. He had 1 touchdown, but there was a couple times where you've seen that Malik Neighbors actually got free on the same route. And all it was just simply a simple curl route. He drops his foot in the ground and he turns upfield. And so got beat on that same route, which is a little bit discouraging. That's one of the things that Coach Quinn talks about is just play recognition and making those adjustments. So would have liked to seen those adjustments. And for what it's worth, look, the Giants were going up and down the field with the Commanders, and one of the reasons why they lost the football game, or the main reason why, is they didn't have a kicker. All right. So the kicker had pulled his hamstring. So who knows? If the Giants have their kicker, then there's a possibility that that game is knotted up and we go into OT, and who knows what happens, right? Because they went for it on fourth down. Malik Neighbors had a drop, and he really had it. He was open. He just dropped it on the sidelines. Fortunate for the Washington Commanders, but Malik Neighbors had quite a day up to that point. And so, that really bailed us out. Then also, too, a little worrisome that Devin Singletary was able to get 95 yards on us there. 22 was his longest. He did lose a fumble, did get a touchdown on us as well. And then Daniel Jones, you see that he looked a lot more comfortable this week than he did last week against the Vikings, which suggests, again, there's going to be some adjustments that are going to be needed for the Washington Commanders. Again, just giving up chunk plays, I would say, is number one for the Washington Commanders. And then play recognition. One of the things that was talked about going into this is that they had given up a lot of yards and actually touchdowns through triple sets to the Buccaneers. And I had brought that to the actual podcast here based off what I had heard on Washington Commanders, locked in Washington Commanders there. And they were talking about that. And he was talking about the fact that, look, this Commanders defense has given up a lot on those triple sets. And they actually gave up a touchdown on one of those triple sets. And so that's one of the things that Coach Dan Quinn had talked about going into this week in his press conference. He said, look, we are going to self-assess. We're going to make those adjustments, and we're not going to wait till the bye week. We're going to go ahead and get on top of this. And so that was a little disappointing to see that. But other than that, look, you have to give the Washington Commanders credit. They went out there, they won the football game, which is huge. I'm not sure if there's any free agents that are going to walk through that door that is going to necessarily help us in the secondary. Not necessarily sure that there is a defensive lineman to go out there and get as well. I did talk about the Hassan Reddick possible trade that the Washington Commanders could explore, which would mean that the Washington Commanders would have to obviously open up the checkbook as well, because that is one of the reasons why he is not playing with the Jets right now. It's a holdout situation. So with that being said, look, I like the Washington Commanders. It's going to be a tough week. As we get that extra day of rest, we are going to be playing the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm sure they are not going to be too pleased in that particular football game, seeing as how they just lost in the final seconds to the Kansas City Chiefs. And we're going against a team that certainly has very good wide receivers. It's going to be a challenge with Jamar Chase. Not sure what is going to happen with T. Higgins, who was out last game with a hamstring. So curious to see. Maybe it's just tweaking the hamstring. It was reported earlier today that A.J. Brown had a hamstring pop up last week. Looks like it's going to keep him out a couple weeks. We'll find out a little bit more as we go over the injury report and get ready to get you geared up for the Bengals and Commanders on Monday Night Football. So with that being said, I'll catch you guys on the next one. I owe you guys another show. Missed yesterday, but we'll be back. So Rico, this is Washington Commanders Insider. I'll see you on the next one. Peace. Peace.